McShin Foundation is Virginia's leading peer-to-peer recovery organization. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, let us get you connected. We can help you build a solid foundation through recovery. Here at the McShin Foundation, we are committed to healing families and saving lives.
Thank you. It is humbling and an honor for me to meet with you today. My name is Carolyn. Let me tell you a little background. I grew up in Signal Mountain, Tennessee. I went to Clemson University on a tennis scholarship, and there I met this cute little boy in a baseball hat that was there on a baseball scholarship, and 36 years later, we're still married. So we moved to Virginia Beach, had 5 children, and started our business. And we're good parents. We did everything right. We had the picket fence family. We were very involved with our church. We read to our kids, played with our kids. We let them pursue their interests and their hobbies and their passion. We had consequences. We had rules, but we weren't too strict. They knew about a work ethic. They knew how important education was. But with addiction, that didn't matter, because addiction creeps in every type of family. It does not discriminate. And that was the thing that I didn't understand. Never in a million years would I have ever thought that I would be talking about my daughter dying from a heroin overdose, because that was somebody else, a stranger in a different neighborhood. But let me talk to you about my sweet, precious Caitlin. She was the 4th of my 5 children, funny as can be, heart of gold. Very athletic. Some stories I remember, and she would always, she had just such a soft heart. I remember she would bring kids home that didn't have good family lives. One time she was working at a sub shop. I picked her up. I think her paycheck was like $117. We had to go cash it and take it back to a coworker because that coworker needed the money more. She brought friends home all the time. I remember one at the dinner table, one of her siblings said, well, Caitlin, do you have any friends that have the same color skin as us? Because she was just, bringing different types of friends home. And she goes, yeah, I do. Ashley, she's so funny, you're gonna love her. So the next week, Ashley gets off on the bus. Ashley does not have one strand of hair. Caitlin forgot to tell us that Ashley was going through chemotherapy, because Caitlin didn't see that. Caitlin saw how funny Ashley was. So that was what my Caitlin was like. She was a great athlete, started playing soccer competitively, and her back started hurting really badly. We took her to the doctor, and they said she had the back of an 80-year-old man, squish disc, surgery wasn't an option. So we started down the road to physical therapy, reflexology, steroid injections, completely quitting soccer altogether, and nothing helped. Her back still hurt, so she said, well, I may as well, keep playing. So she played all in middle school and in high school, and finally the pain got so bad, nothing was working, that the doctors prescribed her heroin. But of course, they called it Oxycontin. And there our story and our struggles began. Not one doctor told us, you gotta be careful, this stuff is dangerous, this stuff is addictive, because 12 years ago, they weren't having a conversation. So we have come a long way, because now we're having a conversation. So soon she became very dependent on these medications. Again, we were clueless of what we were heading down, what path we were heading down, and the slippery slope that we were about to come upon. She was in another soccer accident, knocked her 3 teeth out, broke her nose and her cheek, and the doctors gave her more heroin. This time it was Dilaudid, it was Percocet, it was anything, and y'all know the story from there. One of her friends introduced her to heroin, because, as you know, it's the same thing. When she tried heroin, she called me, said, meet me at Starbucks, I've got something to tell you. I've tried something and I am in serious trouble. She knew the hold that drug had, and she was scared to death. We got her in rehab, and she relapsed and went back, and the seesaw back and forth, and then she got to a place where she was doing really, really well. went in a sober living house. We were communicating. She was about 15 minutes from us. And one night she had been at work all day. She called me, I'm back at the house, my back is killing me. And I said, you know, go get in the bathtub, rest, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning to help to take you to work. And then she had a counseling appointment and another job interview. The next morning I was getting ready to leave. I was actually on the back deck, I'd already gotten ready, and talking to somebody in France. I remember this so much because my youngest daughter was going to do an exchange student program in France. And my husband came out on the deck and his face looked so distorted. And he said, Caitlin's dead. The detectives had come to our door and she had died in a sober living house, locked in the bathroom all alone, about midnight the night before. So she lost her fight, but she's fighting now. We're all fighting for Caitlin. But what I want to tell you people that are struggling with substance abuse disorder is Caitlin had people in that house she could have reached out. I don't know why she didn't, except for her ego. She thought she could beat this herself. She was embarrassed. She was embarrassed about relapsing. She didn't want anybody to know, and I beg you, you've got so much support here. You have got to make that phone call. You have got to knock on somebody's door. You have got to say, I'm desperate, I'm about to sing, I'm gonna do something really stupid. Relapse is the name of the game, you're gonna do it. But you cannot afford to let your ego and your mentality of just this one time, I'm a little weak, my back's killing me, I'm gonna do it this once, I'm gonna be okay. You have got to reach out to somebody and say, help, help, help. If she would have called me, would I have been there? In a second, you bet. If she would have just gone next door to her roommate, if she would just wake the girl up next to her. So I beg you, reach out. And that was her fatal mistake that night because she had so much support. So again, the grief journey, it's different for everybody. I don't remember the first year after Caitlin died. Do not remember hardly anything. It's just a blur. I was just a robot going through the motions. The second year was harder than the first year. The second year was much harder than the first year. Now I'm 3 to 6 years out. I'm 6 years out. And things triggered every day. The other day I'm at Target, I'm walking past the towels, I start crying. This lady asked me if I'm okay, and I'm like, no, no. Because the towels triggered, because when she moved in the sober living house, I gave her used towels. So when I'm looking at these new towels at Target, I'm like, why didn't I value Caitlin's life enough to buy her new towels? You know, I mean, just crazy stuff like that. And of course, I get home and my husband's like, all the kids, when they move out, you give them all sorts of used things, you know. But anything can trigger that grief. The grief journey really has simplified my calendar. Everything is now before Caitlin died or after Caitlin died. I've got like a real simple calendar now and reference point. But you know what? My Caitlin was a fighter. She stayed clean for 14 months and delivered a healthy baby. She was a fighter. Now looking back, that took some guts and it took some strength and it took some courage. So I'm gonna fight for her. So what I'm doing now is I'm talking about this. I'm on the Virginia Beach School Board there in Virginia Beach. I'm running for state senate and I'm telling my story because we've got to shatter the stigma, because nothing's gonna get done if we keep hiding and we don't shatter the stigma. So we're talking about it and we're educating people. As a school board member 2 years ago, I went to my curriculum folks and I said, we have got to get opioid focused education so that everybody knows what these painkillers, how dangerous they are, because I had no clue. And so we went to the state and we got somebody to carry that bill, and now it passed 100 to 0, 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans, and now opioid focused education is in all the schools in the Commonwealth, teaching kids the dangers, the stuff. And it's not just don't do drugs. It's actually, they're doing science experiments. They're really learning about what opioids do to your brain circuitry, and they're doing PowerPoint presentations. They're doing all sorts of really cool stuff. And so I think it's a great program. Another thing that I've done is form Caitlin's Halo, helping addicts and their loved ones. I know I hate to use the word addicts, but I couldn't, Halo, I just had to fit something else in there. But anyway, so we're getting awareness out and education through Caitlin's Halo. We're also offering scholarships for the first time because when I speak at high schools in Virginia Beach, kids always come up and say, my mom, my dad, they're struggling with that, or my sister, or I am. So we're actually giving scholarships to kids who have had addiction in their family to help them with post-education. It doesn't have to be college, but it has to do something with education after high school. And then I have a reading group called Understanding Hearts that are specifically for parents who have lost children because of addiction, because you do have that shared, the guilt of what I could have done, what I should have done, what I didn't do, was I too tough, was I an enabler, so we talk about that. And of course, I want to open up a Caitlin's Cottage, which would be something like a sober living house, but with a lot more wraparound services. Some things that we can do at the state level, which I hope that I can use some of my personal experience to help at that level. We have to have same-day access. When my daughter wanted to get help, and she did, and I know that all of y'all want to get better. You want to beat this disease. But you can't have someone to show up at a hospital and say, come back next week. We don't have room for you. You don't have a bed. Because next week doesn't come for a lot of these people. It would be like going in and having a heart attack and the doctor saying, come back next week, hopefully you'll live till then, and hopefully we can see you there. So that's unacceptable. Also, insurance to not cover this disease. It would be like insurance saying, okay, you've got cancer, I'm gonna cover 1/10 of your chemo, or I'm gonna cover the first part of your chemotherapy. So we've got to really, again, the stigma, this is a disease, it's a health crisis, and we've got to make sure our doctors, our insurance carriers, and our hospitals understand that. Of course, I'm a big advocate of peer recovery. We have got to make sure that we have more peer-to-peer help, because when that struggling person is at the hospital or has had Narcan or whatever, you cannot just say, good luck. You have got to have them talking with someone and have someone there that understands them and can take them to the next step. So we've got to do more with that. And of course, we need something for teenagers. I've got my dear friend Diana who lost her 17-year-old, and there is nothing for these young kids. I know in some places they actually have NA meetings in high schools. We're researching that. I'm researching that in Virginia Beach to see what we can do there. But for these young kids under 18, there's really so few options. And of course, there's so many grandparents raising grandchildren, and that's a huge burden. So I'd like to help out with that too, with some sort of kinship care. So there's a lot of neat stuff that we can do. We've come so far, because the doctors are not prescribing as much. People know what heroin can do, pain medicine. We've got the Narcan, but there's still a whole lot more that we can do. It's taken us 20, 30 years to get here, so it's not an overnight fix, of course. So, but the good news is we're getting there. There is hope. There's more resources. And there's people who know this to be a disease. It's not about bad people getting better or bad people getting good. It's about sick people that are struggling with something getting well. And so that story is, I think, resonating more and more, because even when I'm knocking on doors now, do you know that the opioid epidemic comes up as much as anything else that I talk about? And it's amazing. The other day I knocked doors for a weekend. 3 people last Saturday, I prayed with them on their front porch. They had lost a nephew, a husband, and a child to this epidemic in one day. And they didn't know each other, and it was all different stories, but the same disease. And so the good news too is, because my sweet little granddaughter, who's Caitlin's little girl and is the spitting image of her mom, I'm so blessed to have her, she is gonna know that, and she knows now, her mom died from a disease. Her mom did not die because she was not a good person. Her mom did not die as an addict. Her mom did not die as someone who was worthless and didn't have hopes and dreams. Her mom died because she took too many opioids, she got addicted, and she had a disease. And that's the good news, that this new generation growing up is going to know the truth. So So again, leave today. I am full of hope because we've got so many people doing the right thing and advocating for this. You see all the moms here. But if you're struggling, you've got to reach out. Please, if you're struggling, think of my Caitlin and say, I'm not going to do like Caitlin. I'm going to call someone. I'm going to knock on the door. I'm going to wake somebody up. Okay, so please, if anything, remember Caitlin and reach out for help. Okay, thank you so much.